The sign of a good bit of gear is that you're kind of wishing that you weren't sat in front of a video camera and you could just noodle away with the gear. It's just infuriatingly fun to play. Man, the sustain is crazy. I think I know the side is the amp, right? And the side is the pedal.
The side is the amp.
Welcome back to Andertons TV. I've got a person called John Dines with me.
Hello.
I've got a Fender amplifier from 1955, and I've got a pedal that claims to emulate it. John, welcome to Andertons.
Hello, good to be here.
Let's dig into this. So John, what is your official title at Origin Effects?
I'm the Origin Effects product manager, so it's my job to try and make stuff like this happen.
Okay, and in fact, before we get into the pedals and everything, I've never seen an amplifier like this in the flesh before, at least I don't think I have. Mm-hmm. Tell me about the amp, what it's famous for, where you got it from, and give us some, let's hear it. You can see we've got mics and cables going everywhere, but the first bit of playing, you are just going to hear up the mic'd up amplifier. But yeah, tell us about the amp, where you got it, why it's significant.
This is a 1955 Fender Tweed Deluxe, a 5E3 Tweed Deluxe to be precise, which is the model designation that Fender gave to that circuit. There were a few different Tweed Deluxes before, but that's kind of the best known one. Back in those days, Fender Tweed amps were kind of weird and wonderful and had a lot of quirky sounds and arguably shortcomings, but that was, I think, the one that people consider to have been really the first one that they got right. It's still got quite a gnarly character. You push it hard and it collapses and has this weird fuzzy gain sound that it's famous for. But when you don't do that, it's got a really versatile sound, it's got some great cleaner tones, and it's something you don't see very often. They're quite hard to get hold of, especially working because they're so old. We had this one shipped over from America. We looked for quite a long time to find it, and yeah, it just sounds great, and we wanted to make it into a pedal.
Tell me the asbestos story.
So, when it turned up, obviously we were excited to get testing it and find out what makes it tick, and the small stumbling block was that it was full of asbestos. So we had to wait a few months for it to be officially removed.
And that was factory fitted from 1955, a way of stopping the heat from inside the amp coming, getting out.
All vintage correct 1950s asbestos, obviously a big part of the tone.
I wonder how much Joe Bonamassa's house is full of asbestos. I hope he's checked for that.
I don't think he even wants to know.
You're probably right. In terms of artists whose sound is perhaps synonymous with this type of amplifier, who are we talking?
The real famous one is Neil Young, and he's the guy who gets the amp its reputation for having this kind of collapsing amp about to explode wall of fuzz thing. But it's been used by a lot of people. Mike Campbell of the Heartbreakers for that kind of jangly sound. A lot of Hotel California is famously recorded on a Tweed Deluxe, I think, with a mixture of a Gibson Burst and a Strat. Larry Carlton used one on a lot of the Steely Dan records. So it's sort of, it's more polite.
Some quite good guitar players then, basically, is what you're saying.
Yeah, and there's a reason they choose it. It's because it's kind of got this weird balance between being kind of ratty and unruly and also quite tameable. But when you tame it into those cleaner sounds, it's still got loads of character that comes through.
We've got a selection of guitars here. Les Paul over on John's left shoulder. We've got T-Style. We've got a Strat here that I've pulled out one of my ones with the sort of Clapton mods in it. So we're going to have a bit of a noodle around. But could you just... in my head, I think I hear the Neil Young sound. It's never been a kind of a sound that I've naturally wanted to gravitate to myself. It does sound like that amplifier on the edge of exploding. But take us through, we've obviously messed around for half an hour or so before we started filming. It's full of other sounds. So with no pedals, no nothing, but choose whichever guitar you want to do. Can you just run us through some tones?
I'll start with this thing as it's in my hand, just make sure we're hearing the amp. I mean, there it is, right?
And not that loud either, and already wanting to give a bit of feedback and everything. Sounds...
yes, it's very sort of rock and roll
That
sound.
is one of the best driven sounds. I just had to look out the corner. We barely clipped 90 dB in here, which is like nothing. That is incredible. Could we just, perhaps we'll just plug the Les Paul in or something just to give it, I'm trying to, because I don't think many people will be super familiar with this guitar amp sound. So the Les Paul's just over your shoulder. So I think before we start hearing the pedal and all that other stuff, I'm kind of, let's just familiarize ourselves with this type of sound.
So this is going to be a bit more like the ZZ Top sound that people also know the amp for.
This is such a good sound. It lacks, maybe lax isn't the right word, but the bass end that you'd associate with perhaps slightly bigger, louder combos isn't there. So is it one of those kind of, is it just a classic great band mix amplifier because you'd naturally have other instruments filling in those sort of lower registers?
I think so. I mean, a lot of that is the cab, because the circuit itself actually lets an unusually large amount of bass through, and that's how it kind of has that fuzzy, collapsy sound to it as the circuit gets overwhelmed with low end. Like a lot of more modern amps deliberately remove bass in the preamp to kind of keep things in check, whereas this just have all of it, and it's what contributes to the character. But through that smaller sounding cab with the old speaker, it kind of...
Well, look,
yeah, it does a lot of it for you, which is why I think it's a choice for a lot of pros. They just want the sound ready without having a rack full of gear to do it.
Well, it's tremendous sounding. So that's what it sounds like. Okay, that's your reference. So tell us now, what have you tried to do in the new Deluxe 55 pedal, and what is this setup here? What are, we're using a switcher here. What are we going to switch between?
So, I mean, the simple answer is we've tried to do everything that the amp does. So with the amp recreation pedals that we make, that's what we call our sort of amp in a box products. We reckon the way to get the most convincing amp sound out of a pedal is to just build the entire amp circuit in a pedal. So there's preamp simulation, phase inverter simulation, power amp simulation, rectifier sag, reactive load, and it's all done in analog. So you still retain that kind of feeling of connectedness and immediacy that you get between the guitar and the amp. So yeah, and what we've got set up here is a means of comparing the pedal with the amp. So when we got the amp, in order to test it, we needed to build a reactive load. So that's a box that simulates the interaction between the amp and the speaker, which is what gives valve amps that kind of feel and bounce and all of that kind of good stuff that we think about with valve amps. That's all to do with that interaction between amp and speaker. So we built a reactive load that exactly mimics the effect that the speaker has on the amp in the original box from the 50s. That enabled us to test the amp and measure everything really precisely, and then we built a miniature version of that load to accompany the miniature version of the circuit that's in the pedal. So plugging this pedal in to, in this case, an IR loader is exactly like plugging the amp and our custom reactive load into the IR loader, which is exactly what we're comparing here. We've got our pedal with its miniature load on one side of this JHS switcher, and on the other side is our genuine amp and our scientifically accurate Tweed reactive load, and we're going to compare the two into some IRs that we've made of this exact cab, which have been added to our Origin Effects IR cab library.
Right, and then obviously what we're listening to this to is through our interface and through our Genelec 8040 monitors, and obviously so what you're hearing again will be effectively like a DI'd sound post this through whatever speakers you're listening to. And again, I can't say this enough, if you're just basically watching this on your phone on the go, and this goes for all the Andertons videos, please remember you're not really hearing the truest representation. So if you've got some headphones or you've got some half decent speakers you can listen to, that'll give you a better idea of how this sounds. So okay, let's go through that and let's just understand again perhaps what some of the knobs do on here. But I mean ultimately first let's just do that switching thing and see if there's an obvious sort of difference. Half of me doesn't even want to tell you which one is red and which one is green. I'm not even sure if they would have been able to work that out from earlier in the video. I certainly wasn't paying attention. And just for a bit of fun and jeopardy as well, we're probably going to do some blindfold stuff with Pete as well, maybe with all three of us, just to kind of see what you can see. But for now, yeah, let's just hear the difference. And we'll go through with all three guitars and we can both play a bit. Wow. I mean, not only is that, I'm going to say indistinguishable between the two settings. I'm sure there's always something that you go, but not in a way of going, oh yeah, one's an amp and one's a pedal. But the other thing that's quite remarkable with that is we're getting a similar volume level in the room to what we were getting out of the combo. And so actually, not only is it quite difficult to hear between 1 and 2 there, I'm not really hearing in the room a massive difference between what was coming out of the combo, which is crazy because I think I've always lived by this sense that cab in the room is always better than studio monitors, and it's hard. Maybe at lower volume, it's just not the case.
But we're somewhat annoyingly setting out to try and disprove that theory with all of this stuff, and you know we're giving it the best chance we can. We've got a very accurate replica of the pedal. A very accurate replica of the amp in the pedal, and then the IR that you're hearing through the monitors is an IR of this exact cab.
I guess.
So.
Yeah. What have you done? Have you made the IRs available on the Origin site? I mean, if somebody buys this, can they go and find the IRs of this Tweed amp on your site?
Yeah, so the Origin Effects IR cab library that we've made to go with our other amp recreation pedals has now been updated to include the IRs for the Deluxe 55 as well. So
if that's your setup and you want the exact correct IRs, you can. Look, there's one thing hearing it. Let's have a little kind of sense of, is there a feeling difference? I might just change. Why not?
Yeah, let's do some juggling.
Okay, so this is an old, I forget what year this is. Is it 2000? Yeah, this is a 2000. I was going to say 2,000-year-old, but it's not one of those. It's a year 2000 standard Strat that I've put some noiseless pickups in and the Clapton boost in it. So let's just have a little listen where we sound here. So Clapton boost is off. Oh man, it's so frustrating. Let's introduce some Clapton boost. Is it more different with?
I think you could punch in for a take and nobody would know that it was an edit.
Oh man, I'm not even sure I know which is which. The red side, and again, apology, I think I know the red side is the amp, right? And the green side is the pedal.
The red side is the amp.
And I'm not saying that because I can hear it or feel it. I'm just saying I'm fairly sure when we were setting up, I saw you kind of do it, but I couldn't remember definitely. The red side with all of the Clapton boost dumped in feels like it's compressing slightly more than the green side, but it's you're down to like gnat's hairs of feel rather than necessarily anything immediately apparent and audible. And with the Clapton boost not in, the two sides feel completely identical. And I forget, I think this is a lunatic, like
25 dB or something.
Yeah, it's like
it's
mental amount of boost. So I sort of, to an extent, you end up going, I'm sure valves will inevitably react slightly differently to solid state at that point. But
well, I'm not sure it's even that. We just started this video without really tweaking anything.
Yeah, this is true.
To be that close. So that's just kind of roughly where I remembered it from setting up. So we could probably get it closer. Also, there's kind of component tolerance in the amp as well. I mean, this pedal and that amp are probably closer than two Tweed Deluxes from 1955.
Brilliant.
So
this is true. I mean, it's so. That was one of the things, again, when we were messing around, which we didn't really do in the opening intro, but it's just how good this amp sounds with volume roll. But if
we ignore the comparison for now and just dial in a cleaner sound on the pedal to kind of show it off.
So you want volume on full here?
Yeah. That's the side of the Tweed Deluxe that nobody tells you about.
It sounds wicked. I do have to keep looking at, is it green or is it red? Because I just...
I suppose there are two more very obvious differences between the pedal and the amp, which is on the amp, if you want to do the popular mod of swapping the 12A-YS7 preamp valve for a 12A-X7, you've got to physically reach in the back and put in a new valve that you've just bought. Whereas on this one, you can flick a switch and it changes the preamp circuitry to mimic the effect of swapping the preamp valves.
I've messed around a little bit in the past with... something in my mind says we did a video using a Hot Rod Deluxe or something years and years ago where we switched out the first preamp from a 12AX7 to a 12AU7 or something like that. I know what it was. I think the George Benson signature version of the Hot Rod Deluxe had an AU7 in it as standard.
Okay, yeah, and that makes sense.
My brain, and essentially, yes, it drops the. It's like putting some sort of input pad on it, so it makes it a slightly more cleaner sort of sounding.
Well, on this, it does quite a lot more than that. I mean, components make a bigger difference the fewer of them there are.
Right.
And in a Tweed Deluxe, there's about 10 components because it's such a simple amp. So swapping a preamp valve actually makes quite a big difference to the sound. You get more gain by putting a 12AX7 in, but you also get a different tonal response.
Right.
So it actually changes the frequency that the tone control operates at. So you get more gain and you get this darker sound. So you get the ability to push it harder into that fuzzy sound. And then you also get some top end roll off that helps that sound kind of stand up a little better as well. So if we do the complete opposite of what you just did, maybe Les Paul would be good for this.
Yeah, for sure.
Well,
What a fun video. Amps from 1955 and thousands of pounds worth of guitars.
so this should now be the famous sound.
Man, the sustain is crazy. I don't even know what it is. It's almost like it's so overdriven and so compressed, but similarly so controlled and... So you're saying that's the Neil Young kind of vibe, is it? That
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah.
I think he also had some other wacky methods of pushing it even harder.
Even more.
But that's the sound that he was starting with. It gets particularly fuzzy if you go to the neck pickup and start doing some double stop bends and things.
I mean, that's really, yeah. That sounds like an amplifier just going, oh, help me, I'm gonna die soon.
Except this won't.
Yes, of course.
Which is quite handy because those things are expensive.
Yeah.
The other thing I guess I should mention is the post EQ stuff. So at the moment we're hearing this through IRs and we can run it through a flat power amp into the cab if we want
Yeah.
to hear that. But if you were to run this into the front of a normal amp, the post EQ allows you to compensate for the voicing of the amp.
Right.
So
you mean use this almost like an overdrive pedal?
yeah, essentially, more like a normal amp in a box
Yeah.
style pedal. Like a typical guitar amp isn't neutral in its response. It will
Yeah.
usually add some trebles, scoop some mids, and do things to generally flatter the sound of the guitar rather than reproduce it completely accurately. Which is fine when you're using pedals designed to go into that kind of sound. But this is essentially an amp on a load, so you need some additional tone shaping to kind of make it play nice with the amp. And what the post EQ controls do is give you the opposite curve of an amp's preamp. So when you add the two together,
Should cancel
they
out.
cancel out
Yeah.
and you get the sound of this, but through your desired clean sound.
Presumably, you could bypass. You could just go into the effects return of an amplifier if it had one anyway, and just completely bypass that, and then we're almost getting a similar vibe to what we've got here, aren't we?
Yeah, totally. But if you also need that clean sound for other things in the gig or whatever,
course.
you know,
You
you
just
don't
switch this
have
off.
to
Fun
ruin that
enough.
sound to get this pedal
I
to
tell you
work.
what, I did want to show. People might be thinking that this two notes pedal is adding some of this magic, right? But just to show you, now this is what the two notes is adding. Literally just an IR, and the reverb we've added from our Logic recording software. So
Yeah,
again,
this,
we're really not. You know, there's nothing coming out of this to do with sort of shaping the gain and the feel and everything. It's just doing the speaker emulation.
yeah, like this thing, it can do preamp simulation, it can do power amp simulation, it can do EQ. We've turned everything off apart from the IR.
If I wasn't sure, can you switch between the two different preamp settings? So between the Y and the X. That's interesting. It doesn't drop. I mean, maybe it's because I've got a Les Paul, but it doesn't drop the gain as much as I thought it might. Oh wow, you get the sag, don't you? Is this, what are we on, the Y now? You get that real, yeah.
Yeah, I think when you've got it so completely blown out, you won't hear the tonal change quite as much. But if we go to a slightly more subtle setting,
Yeah.
you should hear it kind of warm up and compress a bit more in the AX7 mode.
It's just infuriatingly fun to play. I should just like, I mean infuriating because I just kind of feel like, in a good way, how many people are going to get to play a 1955 real Fender Deluxe? It's like, I've never played one. I've played thousands of amplifiers, so I'm guessing, most people watching this are going to go, I'm never going to play one. At best, they're going to probably have a profiler of some sort, and they're going to find somebody's downloadable profile of it.
Well, that was what we wanted to do. We've kind of got a bit of history with making amp recreations of slightly more unusual amps, like when we made our Magma 57. That's a recreation of an old Magnatone amp that people didn't know about. But I quite like that with vintage gear, is not just giving people all the things they already know they want, kind of educating them a little, hopefully, about, oh, there's some other cool stuff out there that you wouldn't know about unless you've had the chance to try one.
I don't know what it is about plugging into a pedal versus plugging into a profile, but it does. I mean, you were trying to explain something to do with the impedance as part of the curve. You explain it because you're the technical, but you were saying that there is a difference between the way analog treats the guitar signal as it comes in versus how and by analog we mean valve or solid state, but just different to digital.
Well, it's not so much an analog versus digital thing, it's a solid state versus valve thing, typically. When a valve amp interacts with a speaker, the reactance of the speaker causes the valve power amp to behave differently at different frequencies. The impedance of the speaker varies with frequency. So that causes the amp to do different things depending on what frequencies it's outputting into the speaker. Quite nerdy, quite boring. The long and short of it is, that's what gives valve amps the kind of bounce and interaction. And part of that amp in the room feeling that I think you were surprised to be hearing through the monitors. So it's not so much that this does something that digital gear doesn't do, it does something that other solid state pedals don't do.
Right.
Which is to simulate that crucial factor of the valve amp.
Okay, so that's even more interesting. So it's not, so it's not, as you say, it's not a solid state versus digital thing. It's the uniqueness of this because of the mini reactive load that's built into the pedal.
Exactly, yeah.
Got it. Wow. I mean, that is interesting, isn't it? It's my bad really, but or maybe it's Origin's bad, I don't know. I've never had any of the amp recreation pedals explained to me in the way you've explained this one. If we went back and looked at the Magma and we looked at the Revival and some of the other ones in that series, is it all doing, is there fundamentally like mini reactive loads in all of those as well, or is this a first?
Pretty much. It's just that our ability to do it's improved over time. We were talking earlier about the sort of iterative process of improving products, and this I would say is our most accurate one yet. But the ones that it's building on are very accurate already. But they all have that reactive load thing and that bounce and interaction.
I think it's set a really interesting new benchmark for brands to try to do this whole amp in a box thing, because it's just.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. When I've heard early Tweed amp in a box type pedals before, they've never been, I've always gone, I'd rather have a slightly later, like a 60s Deluxe or a Marshall JTM or something. I've never really played through anything claiming to sound like this that's made me go, oh yeah, I want that sound. But I think you might have changed my mind now, because this is a real, it is. I do get the magic.
It's quite addictive,
I'm not even
isn't
playing through it. I'm playing through a pedal claiming to be it, but I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. That is a smooth killer. And we're so quiet in here. You said, in fact, the sign of a good bit of gear is that you're kind of wishing that you weren't sat in front of a video camera and you could just noodle away with the gear. You know,
well,
which is how I feel.
This pedal probably took us about twice as long to develop as it needed to, because every time anybody had to test anything, they played about 2 hours of guitar before doing the job they were meant to.
Okay, so we're going back to an amp that's very different set to this now. So could you set this now to be more like that red sound?
Just play a little.
Would we be on the AX7 maybe more than the...
No, that's got an AY7 in it.
Oh, okay.
We do have valves if you want to do a valve swap and compare it.
We've got time, right? Yeah, okay, well, I'm getting the nod. Well, welcome back to the wonders of live TV, everybody, where we find out that actually the valve that was in it for the whole of the first part of that demo was in fact the 12 AX7. So all the time we were trying to get a sound using the 12 AY7 setting on here, we actually didn't have the 12 AY7 in the amp. So we now definitely have got the AY7 in here, and let's see if we now get even closer, if that's even possible, because it's pretty close before.
I could be embarrassed by that, but it's only going to get more accurate. So I've kind of done us a favour, go for it.
By the way, this is the valve that we're talking about, right? So it's a single one of these, AX7 versus AY. Were you even switching there? That's ridiculous. I'll tell you what is weird. As soon as you can visually see you're switching, and Pete and I have said this so many times in videos, as soon as you can see something has changed, it reinforces some psychosomatic thing to the ears to go, oh, I've changed something. When I wasn't really paying attention, I didn't even know you were switching. That's such a good sound. It's the same, isn't it? Man alive, look, great pedal. Congratulations to everyone at the Origin design team.
Thank you.
That is insane. We will finish this video literally by just getting John to play a bit more, Pete will play a bit, and I'll hold my hand over the switch and we'll switch left and right, and you can kind of go, oh, I can hear the difference, or I can't hear the difference, and we'll see if Pete and John can go. Maybe we can fool John into thinking that which is which. What can I say? I mean, what a treat as well to see. I mean, one would assume that back in those days, Leo probably, you know, was pretty hands-on with all this stuff. So he probably touched that amplifier, and you know, he's such a, you know, he's probably the most important person in guitar history, if not, you know, one of the most important people. So anything that he probably touched, I feel slightly reverential towards. But look, John, thank you very much for coming down.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Links will be below to go and find out a bit more about the technical spec of the Deluxe 55. They're available to buy from Andertons or whichever else is your local Origin dealer. Obviously, in the UK, we'll ship one anywhere to you. How much is it?
It's £279.
That is competitive, right? There's plenty of pedals claiming to do this that are more. So anyway, look, That's the end of the video. Thank you so much, John, for coming down, bringing that beautiful guitar amplifier with you. We're going to end up now. This is just a free-for-all, so anybody that wants to play guitar can come up here, play guitar. I'm going to switch it. I'm not going to tell you which is which. I'll reveal at the end which was which, and you can play along, see if you can hear the difference. But that was awesome. Thank you so much. Thanks for watching. Congratulations, Origin Effects. Play, Mr. Pete. Play, Mr. Pete. Okay, audience, and Mr. Pete, was the first clip or the second clip the real amp?
I have no idea.
Guess.
I have second one.
Correct!
Oh.
What did you guess? Okay, different guitar or cable to John? Same thing again.
50% that I got that right.
Okay. Play. Play again. So, audience and Mr. John, was that second clip a real amp or a pedal?
I think the second one's the amp, but if I'm wrong, then I've done my job properly.
You are wrong. You've done your job properly. The second one was the pedal.
It's the feel as well. The feel is just the same. It feels
Come on,
exactly the same.
Mr. Pete, pick another guitar, play a Strat or something like that. Okay, where will the switching stop, Mr. Pete? Okay, and which is this? So which was the amp and which was the pedal?
Again, I don't know. Pedal is number one.
Okay, what do you think in the audience? Haha, well I just left it on the same setting both times because I knew that somebody go, I can tell which one the bang. So yeah, they were both the pedal. Just because that's the fun again. It was the pedal, yeah, but they were both the pedal. Just because I know someone go, oh, you can definitely hear the amp, but you can't because that was both the pedal. Anyway, look, that was fun, right?
Wow.
That's the end. Okay, cheers guys. Go try it yourself. It's very good. Bye.